All right, good evening. Today is June 9th, 2015. This is a regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 26, 2015 regular meeting?
So moved.
By Deirdre?
Second.
By Lisa? Any discussion or changes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have an opportunity for public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. For recognition of our 2014-15 staff retirees. So I have a few notes, and these are only in alphabetical order, just so everyone knows. We have Barbara Allstat, who has been with us for 11 years. She is our library media specialist at Chancellor Livingston School. As I recall, she started with us at CLS as a computer teacher. Where's Barbara? I know she's here somewhere.
There she is, right there.
There she is.
Behind the computer.
Hiding behind the computers there. Then moved on to the library, where she created a wonderful instructional environment. She has brought insightful activities to Chancellor through the library, such as Sit, Stay, Read, a program with therapy dogs and their owners, summer reading initiatives, book clubs with older students, author visits, etc. Congratulations, Barbara.
Thank you.
We have Deborah Brieger, 24 years. Ms. Brieger is one of the few district historians left on the campus, is what I'm told. She is one who knows from where we have come. She is one who has been actively involved in designing where we are today. Finally, she continues to contribute meaningful research and input to guide the future of the Rhinebeck Central School District. She is able to contemplate the big picture, analyze and considers all angles of a given situation, and plan and articulate a vision right down to the most minuscule detail. And she is very organized, I'm told. An amazing teacher that has taught our students so much about the world around them using a hands-on approach. She has a wealth of knowledge and information on many topics that she shares with us. Children in the community have been blessed to have her as a teacher. Even the most disorganized child has a neat and organized science binder. And I can attest to that fact because both of my children have this binder. Congratulations. Maureen Cunningham, 28 years and 5 months as a high school English teacher. Mrs. Cunningham, as department chair, has helped out our school and department navigate shifting to the Common Core. She has spent countless hours with students on their writing, essays, college applications, and has always attended to the social and emotional learning of our students, even before that concept was named in the teaching profession. Maureen has served as an official and unofficial mentor to new faculty, spending a lot of time mentoring, teaching by example, and supporting colleagues. Congratulations. Ann D'Angelo, 19 years, has worked in her present position for the past 5 years as an administrative assistant for the vice principal and athletic director. She has played an important role in the day-to-day activities of the athletic world as well as the entire school community. Her ability to get along with others and cheerful attitude has made her a valuable member of the Bulkley Middle School and Rhinebeck High School family. We'll miss her friendliness and good cheer as she moves on to the enjoyment of retirement and extra time with her family. Congratulations, Anne. Lally Moses Steckman, 24 years and 9 months. Great advocate for the needs of students she serviced, always able to articulate the needs of her students using the real-world applications. Wonderful addition to the child study team, always engaged in intelligent problem solving, and is a huge asset to the CLS staff. Thank you. Glenn Vining, 30 years and 5 months, high school earth science teacher. Mr. Vining, as department chair, has worked to create and improve a smooth running department. He spent countless hours helping students master a difficult curriculum making sure they have completed their requisite labs, and providing many hands-on experiences to understand earth science. His Regents' passing rates have always been exemplary. Glenn has served as an official and unofficial mentor to new faculty, spending a lot of time mentoring, teaching by example, and supporting colleagues. Congratulations, Mr. Vining. And last but not least, Deborah West, 28 years, grade 5. I believe she taught kindergarten briefly also. Is that correct? Her love of Shakespeare and performing on stage was something she encouraged in her students over the years. She would perform The Tempest or A Midsummer Night's Dream each year with her class. This past year, she did an after-school program open to all grade 5 students. This May, they performed A Midsummer Night's Dream for CLS students during the day and parents at night. She also advocated for hands-on nature activities for her students every year. And I know that she was also heavily involved in the whale watch. And congratulations, Mrs. West.
So I'll make a motion now to suspend the rules so we can enjoy some cake and coffee. Okay.
Mr. Wong.
I just want to say a couple of things here, because these are not just teachers, these are my friends out here. I have to tell you, I spent some time today with a pencil and paper going back, trying to figure out if I could take some credit as much as 28 years ago for having been on a board of because I was on a board of education 28 years ago, for the appointment of some of you folks. And if I could, I thought maybe I could claim some wisdom. But then I realized that most of you know me, so my claiming wisdom wasn't going to sell. So then I moved on. I'm going to ramble here, folks. You know that. I moved on to just thinking about the personal attachments that a couple of you had children who's graduated with our kids. A couple of you had people who were the best friends of our own kids. We had a lot of them. We used to have people, we had several of them at the dinner table who would refer to Mr. Vining as Mr. Vining. You always knew that was a good thing. If you get called Vining, it's not so good. If it's Mr. Vining, it's okay. Annie and I bowled in the same bowling league years and years and years ago until they declared me incompetent. I couldn't stay any longer. I think that maybe we have an entire family retirement going to happen here. It's none of my business, but isn't that, Ali, didn't you tell me that you folks are heading off on a trip or something of that? Oh, okay.
That would be too much for you.
Oh, okay. Deborah, I can only imagine that at this point, the reason that you're retiring is that you're going to franchise McWeasels or something of that sort. And if so, we want in. Okay, I won't ramble on any longer, but consider yourself hugged, folks. Thank you.
Second.
Well, actually, I'll just take a second. I'm no longer having personal remarks because I've known many of you too, all of you, as my kids went through the school system and being on this board as long as I have. And, you know, I agree with, I just want to, you know, piggyback on the sentiments here that you've all contributed so much, tremendously in so many ways to the education of so many kids, and really to create a whole school district that really we are all so proud of. And so I hope as you leave, you feel that sense of accomplishment and contribution to this whole community over these many years. And just one little tiny anecdote that relates to two of you is when one of the times that Mrs. Cunningham had a reading of the book Night by Elie Wiesel, which was a fantastic contribution to that curriculum over those years. And I know it's moved on to a different activity, but really just powerful for all of those students. And one year the teachers all read portions of it, and I always want to tell you, Mr. Vining, that when you came to your portion of Night, it was the most exceptional, exquisite reading of that passage, and it's always really stuck with me. So I think it's just an example of the many ways throughout the years that each of you have contributed in big and small ways to the district. So I just want to add my personal thanks as well. And then, can stop
All right.
the cake. And
All those in favor? And,
oh, it says okay.
all right, once again, congratulations to all our retirees. Now we're going to have a update on Commissioner's Regulation 154, English Language Learners, by Mr. Zitt and Ms. Barpoulis.
Are we going to need to move?
Are you using this? Okay, yes.
Using the PowerPoint. It'll just
Fantastic.
take a moment
Okay, so Kathy, do you want to speak?
to begin.
Or are you going to come back around?
I'm going to be coming around here. It'll just take a moment. Okay. Just take a moment. And while this is warming up, I'd like to introduce, first of all, thank you very much for listening as we present about the STLD grant for ELL students and forming collaborative partnerships with the ELL parents in Rhinebeck. I wanted to explain what the STLED grant is. That stands for Step Up and Lead. And this was an opportunity that was posed to me by Duchess Bosse's, by Jody DeLucia, and by Kip Newman down at Duchess Bosse's, who had contacted me. And apparently they had a little over $1 million to be able to spend and distribute to local school districts. It was a leadership grant. It was for principals and aspiring principals in Dutchess County. And when I heard about it and what was involved, every participant would receive $5,000 for their school district and $5,000 for their school to spend in whatever manner in which they saw a need for improvement or just to meet a need that they saw in their district. So I'll tell you a story, actually. As a math AIS provider for grades K through 5, my students kind of intersect with Robin Berger students, and Robin is our ELL teacher for K through 12. I noticed I had a lot of ELL students in my math classes, and two in particular, one day, and for many days, kept asking me if they could bring home some extra assignments and extra work so that they could play school at home with their younger siblings in kindergarten in our own district. And I was really touched by how they really wanted to continue their math learning at home and teach their younger siblings. So they asked for math materials and whiteboards and games, and they wanted to take whatever they learned in school home to their siblings. So that was what really inspired me, because I saw their zest for learning. And when I started to examine the data in our district as well, I saw that this was a subpopulation that really needed some close attention as well, and that we could, although we had collaborative structures in place that are excellent, that we could help to strengthen those collaborative structures. And so that was really the reasoning behind the grant. I'm going to have to move it from here. Just to go into describing the components of the grant, the intention of the proposal that I put together, it was threefold. Basically, I wanted to build upon some of the wonderful collaborative partnerships that we had already established in the district through Young Rhinebeck. And I wanted to really empower the families and have them feel even extra welcome coming into the school. Young Rhinebeck has done such a wonderful job doing that already, and I just wanted to strengthen those relationships and really make learning accessible not only to the students, but to the parents as well. The second part of the proposal was to support that parent involvement by actually purchasing some materials that would encourage that parent-student game playing, math game playing at home, literacy materials that were meant for both students to read and parents to read side by side. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. And also to begin to create a staff development model that would kind of be the initiative as we moved forward with the professional development of ELL education, which Richard will talk a little bit more about in terms of the CR 154 Part 2 regulations. But we really wanted to build a cultural awareness, and Young Rhinebeck really helped us out with that. And so Richard's going to talk a little bit about, we decided the first action step would be to go to participate in the May faculty meeting at Chancellor. And Richard gave a presentation first.
So at that faculty meeting, excuse me, Wendy Brisley was there from Young Rhinebeck. Must be kind of both towards the faculty from different directions. And much like I did with the board, I think back in January, I pretty much informed the staff and Chancellor just what the changes in the regs are going to mean for the next year. So once again, the big focus, excuse me, is on the fact that at least one unit of service has to be pushed into an English class. So that's something that's totally new and fairly radical. I want to give them the heads up before next year Robin comes into the class and they're trying to figure out what to do. The other part, which is really key also, is going to be the annual meetings. So once again, we're going to treat these students like almost like special students, and we're going to have an annual meeting each year. Typically, all the service providers, teacher, parent, an advocate from Young Rhinebeck due to the language barrier, with the same purpose in mind, simply to help make sure that the children are going in the same direction, receive all the services they can have, so when they come into high school, they can meet the same college and career readiness standards as anybody else. I also focused on the 15% PD requirement that goes into effect next year. So as I've been receiving PD pieces from, say, the New Paul's Arbor, I've been sending them out to all the staff at Chancellor. Several staff have actually gone to some of the trainings recently. It's been using it as kind of a venue to let them know that outside of our own conference day time, that may be allocated to L's. Also, half-day trainings at Touches BOCES, New Paul's BOCES also is a great way to kind of tag team into that. And then I'm missing something. So it's PD, annual meetings, integrated class. And obviously I share with them all that we're also hiring in process of hiring an ESL teacher. So we have 2 demos tomorrow, 2 next week, and I should have somebody by next Wednesday who's ready to come on board next September. With that, answer a few questions from the staff, and then Wendy took over from her end with respect to the whole community piece, what Young Rhinebeck does vis-a-vis the advocates and the families, and really kind of making that connection, as Kathy's going to talk about, making that connection even stronger, because that's really a vital piece of the puzzle.
So we had this wonderful community resource in Wendy Brisley and Young Rhinebeck, and so we decided to ask her to do a little bit of professional development with the staff. Particularly, we have a lot of new staff members, and so she was able to kind of kick off the professional development by talking about specifically ELL community members and our community in terms of how as teachers we could support student learning and what some strategies were that would really help to reach students and how they could be incorporated into components of our day already, such as morning meeting and the welcoming. Again, so she was a wonderful resource, and she also engaged the staff in a whole culture building activity, and it was a nice way to, I think, proactively introduce these new standards and to just raise cultural awareness. I heard since then some staff members have gone on to attend some professional development offered outside of the district with regards to ELL instruction, and also to prepare for the co-teaching model. So that was exciting. And then the next step, Richard's going to talk about meeting with advocates.
What we decided to do was not to overwhelm the parents all at once and bring them in for this workshop and kind of just all at once out of nowhere come up with all this information. So what we thought to do first was bring all the parent advocates, with Wendy, myself, Robin, and Kathy. Tell them what the new changes are going to require, so they had a chance to ask me questions, because the advocates and the families really trust each other. And I didn't want me to be the first person to give them the news. I wanted to come from the advocates. So we brought in all the advocates. Wendy taught the changes, so they had a firm grasp of it, so they could take it back to the families, and then really get a sense of what it may mean in the bigger picture. Sandra, Arias, mentioned something I was not aware of, but many of the Hispanic families in this community, when the school calls them, they think it's usually for some kind of bad news.
Oh.
I was not aware of that, I did not think of that, but culturally, when school calls, typically it's not for good news. And if they do come in, they're a little guarded. So what we want to do is kind of break down some of those cultural biases, and I thought that at least bring the advocates in first, so they went out as the first line to communicate to the families what the school's going to offer and some of the changes that they incorporate would be a great way to kind of soften the teachers. And then once that was set, bring them back in for a parent meeting and put them together also. But that was really great, took about an hour. The advocates were there about 4 of them, nice people, really enjoying the fact that the schools look at the community and partner with them a little stronger, and that was actually pretty productive.
Our third action step was to actually hold the parent meeting, and we decided to do that on June 1st. We broke the meeting into 2 parts. The first part was when Richard communicated the regulations to the parents, and this was a very interactive meeting. We wanted it to be something with role play, so Richard
So what we
will
did is
describe
that
it.
rather than talking about having an annual meeting next year, I had Sandra, one of the parents, join Kathy, Robin, and I in an actual annual meeting. So we sat around the table, we talked about our roles, the kind of questions we were going to ask. We would ask the questions, Sandra would translate. There were parents sitting there in the couple of rows, listening intently. The mom would then speak again in Spanish. Typical kind of questions about student success, how they're doing on tests and quizzes, homework, class participation. And the parents in the audience, I think to the point, it seemed so real, they started asking questions about their own children.
Yeah.
So it really elicited a lot of questions that I thought was actually a positive sign.
Yeah.
People smiling, nodding their heads,
Yeah.
really appreciative. We just did that for like 10, 15 minutes to let them know this is what it's going to look like next year, and here's the purpose, and kind of took at any kind of fear that they may have, that there was any kind of other agenda. Anyone ever wrote about it? It's not a question.
I felt that we learned so much by doing it in that manner, and by truly being able to listen to the parents, and I was really appreciative that they felt comfortable enough to ask us a lot of questions.
They did.
So it was really very exciting. At the same meeting, then we broke out into 2 sessions. Robin Berger led one session, and that was about the literacy materials that we were able to order. We were able to order probably over $3,000 worth of leveled bilingual materials where at home parents will be able to read the same story with their child. On one side, it's in Spanish. On the other side, it's in English. And so they'll read the entire story. We also had some famous author collections that are both in Spanish and in English, and they're going home as well. And also books in English at 2 different levels, again, inspired by my students who wanted to read with their younger siblings. And so there's language on one side at their grade level, and on the other grade level, their siblings' grade level language. In math, we're able to, we use the Everyday Math program, and they have family game kits. So we were able to order a lot of family game kits, and then during the breakout session, I showed the parents how to use the games within the kits and play them with their children, and we had some students there who demonstrated how to play the games. We also introduced them to the online component of the Everyday Math program, which has resources both in Spanish and in English. Lots of resources. The directions to the games, directions to a lot of other components, homework, the parent letter, and so the parents were very excited about how they could participate in their child's learning at home. Also, we're going to be able to get a subscription to Raz Kids. And by the way, these are going home with students before the summer, and then during the summer, I'll be in the building, Wendy Brisley will be in the building, and the students will be able to sign out additional materials, fiction, nonfiction, social studies, science, ELA, math. So we're excited about them accessing online and also having those take-home resources. So we have next
We
steps.
do. So out of the parent meeting, actually workshop, talking to Kathy, Robin, and Wendy, it appeared that we had something that we didn't quite, kind of grew from the ground up, literally. So what we're going to do from my end is have bookend workshop meetings with all the parents of the ELs in September and June. I'm going to kind of kick off the year, make sure they know who to talk to when they have questions, because that was one of the big things that came from the little role plays that parents had questions about simple things like homework and how long their child was doing homework, even language difficulties that they never got to navigate, never got to me or to Mr. King, so you can see that whole communication piece has been fixed. So we're going to do that in September to make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to have my annual meetings in February, small annual meetings, and we're going to have a big meeting in June. Once again, to make sure the whole year went along, the whole year went as planned. Any questions, any feedback, anybody kind of fixes for the following year, just to keep the lines of communication open. And then we'll do that pretty much from this point forward. Which I thought was a great way to kind of bring that into the school community at a greater level, plus young Rhinebeck. Because they do everything at the school, homework help. They've got a summer camp they do a chance in the summertime to work on these kinds of reading and math skills. So I thought it was a really great way to kind of tie all this together. One of the things about the new regulations is that they say through research, outcomes for adults really do improve when you're able to involve some kind of community organization. Young Rhinebeck already existed. We simply were able to kind of plug in, so to speak, and it just took off. So Wendy was really excited, the advocates were excited, the parents were excited, they asked tons of questions, it was really productive.
Another of the next steps is I'm going to be creating videos and chalk talks, and through the grant I was able to purchase all the microphones, the snowball microphone, the other microphones, the tablet for the chalk talks, and I'm going to be recording, and with the assistance of the advocates, Spanish and in English, some of those real math-oriented procedures that span grades K through 5. And so I'm excited about offering that, and even recording certain lessons so that parents can look back if they're not sure about the different algorithms. Since there are a lot of new procedures right now in mathematics with the Common Core. Also, at the bottom, just make sure that I'm going to make sure each child has their everyday math password as they go home over the summer, because they'll be able to use it in school with Wendy Brisley in the Young Rhinebeck program and at home. So we were excited about making sure that they had that, the RAS kids. Also, I was talking with representatives at Star Library, and Young Rhinebeck had done something like this years ago with Star Library, and so this will be a continuation of their good work with having a day for parents to come and see the wonderful resources that we have at Star Library. So these are, who knows, this list will probably continue over the next few weeks, but we welcome any of your questions. Yes?
Are all English language learners in the district Spanish speaking?
That's good.
Or most of them. We have one who speaks Bengali, and then a number else spoke Vietnamese. Most of them Spanish.
What are you offering for those?
Well, that's I mean, last year, just so you know, it was kind of funny. The young person from Bangladesh took her science regions. I don't remember ever calling the state of the art or who calls about looking for some way to translate their science regions into Bangladesh. And so what happens is they directed me to a free company down in Florida. When you call them in real time, they find someone who speaks Bengalese and English. So Robin Bird took 5 hours talking into a microphone.
Wow.
Oh my
Our science
gosh.
region, well, this person translated for the student who then spoke back.
Oh my gosh.
So there are a lot of things out there, but for certain languages, the resources are kind of thin.
Yeah.
They're not common.
Yeah.
So most of them do have a Spanish background. And for those who do come and have more of an exotic language, then I got to go. Resources, and I was so happy I found that phone call.
That's fabulous.
Something it was free, so we did. And Robin said it worked.
Wow.
But it was time consuming. But there are resources, resources out there. It's just not necessarily simply an easy fix, given the task at hand.
I've been in conversation with Steve Jensen also, asking the question about how different announcements can be translated into other languages. And so he was going to look into what
Or
some
use
other
Google.
districts are doing.
Google Translate.
Yes.
Well, the good news too is that we're now hiring a new ESL teacher. So one of the candidates is a candidate who actually works in a school in the Bronx. That's all L's. So it's a school in the Bronx, like it's called New World High School, something like that. And every student in the district, in the school, is an English language learner. So you're talking about 30 different languages. So once again, the people we are hiring coming on board have a much more wider perspective as far as the services, because they have to, which is exciting. So I'm going to tap into that knowledge base pretty quickly.
It's not so, well, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. First of all, how wonderful and exciting it is to see you connecting with Young Rhinebeck and Star Library and bringing together community resources in this way, because so often we talk about how desirable that is, but it's awfully hard to do. So I'm
Well,
really...
I can say, I can agree that we did that with role play. Many of the parents in the audience started to smile, and really they made it personal, and they started asking us personal questions as
Yeah.
if it was their child's meeting.
Yeah.
I couldn't answer right there. I said, this is, give me some time.
They were ready to jump in.
You got it.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
excited.
And then I guess
And we were.
the other comment is that whatever grows out of this in terms of creating this more sort of maybe breaking down some of the barriers between the communities of these families and the school for ways in which we all of the students and all the families in the district might be able to benefit from learning from what they bring to our
Yes.
community.
And just to use the students with the Spanish background as an example, one of the new focuses on the new regs is to, when you're thinking about addressing, say, a common core standard, you know, that's a universal standard. How you get there, the activities you pick can be full of biases.
Right.
And Robin mentioned one time in 5th grade they do a geography project. And all of the Hispanic students pick New Mexico. Because they know New Mexico, they have cultural and content background knowledge they can share, really
Yeah.
blossom. So part of the new regs require teachers to develop a lesson plan to a universal concept that they think about L's and incorporate their cultural background, because it gives them an opportunity to really use their background knowledge in a way that so accesses the standard.
Right.
It requires teachers and people to think about their own biases and how they would
Yeah.
address that.
Yeah.
But it is part of the new regs
Yeah.
to incorporate that culture. So you're not seeing it as something to kind of change and
Right.
push to the side.
Right.
You want to bring a center stage.
Right.
Some of the books we ordered are multicultural books, and Robin Berger also had an excellent idea about cultural diversity, celebrating diversity, and serving different foods at Chancellor in a celebratory
It's great work.
way. Deirdre?
Yeah, this is terrific, that this partnership that's developing, and I'll just for full disclosure, I'm on the board of Young
Yeah.
Rhinebeck, so
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody knows that Young Rhinebeck is actually running this after-school
Yeah.
program for English language learners at Chancellor for 10 years, about 8 to 10 weeks a semester. It's funded primarily through grants from the Thompson Trust, the Dyson Foundation, more recently the Frost Foundation, members of the community, and it's a partnership with Bard College that also receives money from the Thompson Trust, because Bard College tutors come and work with the students for academic help, and the parent advocacy recruiter or volunteers in our own community, volunteer their own time to do translation of advocacy work. So one resource for students whose Spanish is not their second language, or their first language rather, would be, Bard College. I just want to throw that out there, that they have an investment in this program, and there are students from all over there, and faculty as well. So just
Oh, yeah, good point. For
keep
other
in mind,
languages.
child community language.
Yeah.
That someone at Bard might be able to
Yeah.
provide some kind of resources. So is this grant that you've done, is that a state grant money? Is that where the money is? The STLE? I mean, where's the money come from?
I know that it was through Duchess Bosse's and with Jody DeLucia, Kip Newman,
So you
and
applied
Arnold
to
Jaeger.
BOCES for it, so they had the money to distribute.
Well, they were given an opportunity, I think, $1.4 million in
Yes.
December to use
Okay.
into schools. It was a short turnaround. So they had this opportunity, they had to really get people on board quickly, use it productively, and I think it came from the state. So once again, it came from the state. BOCES and BOCES kind of formed that.
Okay.
Was that $1 million for Duchess BOCES to distribute?
For the most part, yeah.
Yes.
So it happens all the schools in the county,
Okay.
Wappinger,
Right.
To support and promote leadership initiatives.
And so this grant was $10,000?
It was $5,000 to the school district, $5,000 for our project.
You're doing fantastic things with it. And then just one little detail, that this is what I heard recently. Is the state changing the language which they always do? Is it now like English
As a new
As a new
language?
language. Yes.
ENL?
ENL.
You have to like.
ENL.
Okay. Okay.
They meant English as a new language. So, yeah, because I think they're trying to change the old bias.
Right. Well, that's
Right.
good. That's good.
Great work. Thanks.
Thank you both. It's really inspired and really outside the box kind of thinking, and I really appreciate you doing it. Can you speak a little bit more to the professional development that you'd like to see for the staff around this?
Sure, I mean, once again, the reg requiring everybody next year, teachers and teacher assistants, anybody doing any kind of instruction, that 15% of all their PD is with L's in mind. The good thing about it, think about it, is that, from my perspective, being for special education, is that language is language is language. So a lot of the same strategies that are useful to students who are L students are also useful to students who have language disabilities, speech and language. There's a fair amount of overlap there. So once again, it's really useful to have something that can apply to the spectrum. So this force conference days by reg now we have to have about 15% of that time devoted to L's. It could be coming in and using more visuals. So it's again, rather than just kind of speaking and leaving words kind of hang in the air, make it concrete so the student can make an association which can help develop the language. Once again, using someone's cultural knowledge. Students come to us from an educational background where they know, say, earth science, they know history, just in Spanish. And it's not a question where they don't know the content, it's how you access the content. So you're trying to kind of work around some of those language barriers and actually come up with a curriculum that they can, demonstrate that knowledge. So once again, one of the things we look to do hiring an ESL teacher is put out situations where we want to potentially do a certified special ed, and some of the people who have applied actually work with leading out researchers and people who want to come across state standards to really develop an L curriculum embedded into English. So once again, that's the new wave coming up. It's all fairly new because the model's changing. So what many schools do with smaller students would have a standalone English ESL class that Mrs. Berger would do. She pulled the kids out, they occupy multiple grade levels, and now it's just on language acquisition. It wasn't content specific. So the state realized that depending on what a student kind of pumps into a New York State school system, is that when you pull them out to work on the language, they're missing the content academic knowledge, which means they're not going to pass the English exam, and by the time they're 17 or 18 and actually have proficient language, they don't have the credits, they don't graduate from high school. So the whole emphasis is that these are not intellectually deficient individuals. This is a language process, and they don't want to have that stop them from having the same outcomes as everybody else in post-high school. So you can see that's the direction. And they've also allowed now, with that in mind, the English Regents now is a 55 pass rate. So as long as they pass the class, and they get a 55 or higher on English Regents, that counts as a multiple. So you can see them really acknowledging the fact what it takes to walk two worlds at the same time, given Common Core standards. A lot of it is just so new, I couldn't tell you specifically what it's going to look like because it's happening right now.
Yeah. This is a real asset-based approach, and the mindset is to have equity of access for all of these students and to hold very high expectations in mathematics and ELA. And so it's a support. How can we provide support systems, strategies, vocabulary support to help these students?
One more comment. I think one of the concerns I can speak for my colleagues in Rhinebeck, which is that as children get older, the issue about accessing resources at college and applying to college and depending on their own parents' English language skills, we all know how complex that application process is. And I would just also encourage this sort of partnership and collaboration and next steps to consider that age group of the particular needs of those students who come from families who aren't speaking English, and what happens post-high school is a challenge.
If you think about it, once again, since I'll be sharing the meetings on the CSE chair, since transition is always one of my focuses, I now bring pretty much a CSE perspective to Alice. So when we're having annual meetings in high school, those are going to be topics of we talk about that kind of stuff. So I'll say, talk to Jeff Ross, say, so students are junior, they got all their credits, where are they going? Are they applying to colleges? They're looking for scholarships. Once again, you're now putting all of that kind of conversation into a yearly committee that has a purpose. So that's going to be things we're going to discuss that when they come to high school. We're into high school now, what do they need to do? What kind of classes should they take? Where do they want to go? So once again, all students should have some kind of career plan. So that same kind of focus, that same kind of past high school is going to be there also, with notes to parents and to-do lists for staff and guidance counselors.
Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
support.
It's really inspiring. Congratulations. Thank you, Grant. Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to board committee reports. First, we have curriculum.
Okay. So we began the first of what will be a series of meetings and discussions in the curriculum committee to look at the curriculum as it's being written by the faculty and the director of curriculum, Marvin Krebs, and we looked specifically at ELA curricula from K through 3. And some examples also from grade 8 in BMS, as well as the text of the Common Core Learning Standards, which we read in detail and connected to what we saw happening in the gigantic binder full of units that Marvin shared with us. First of all, we were completely blown away by the extraordinary effort and collaboration that has gone into producing the curriculum to this point. The comprehensive approach to the new standards is clearly, as we've said over and over again, not getting curriculum off a website or out of a box, but really thinking deeply and in a way that's consonant with our educational mission here in the Rhinebeck School District to make it our own. So we were incredibly impressed by the integrity of this process. Marvin spoke to us about how his office has to, quote, build the frames around what he calls power standards, particular things that students have to master at each sort of grade level as they progress toward the college and career readiness standard that is, in a sense, kind of being reverse engineered into the curriculum all the way back to kindergarten, first grade. Really important questions were raised immediately as we were looking at this about what is the role that the individual teacher has in designing his or her lessons, having control over pacing and so forth in relation to this new curriculum. And Marvin did acknowledge that this is a shift. In the past, there was diversity of practices across classrooms at a grade level at Chancellor, and obviously now there's a move to really examine what's happening in every classroom at a grade level and making sure that these units are being, in a sense, adhered to across the board. He pointed out that the system of having that kind of diversity, while sort of had certain strengths, it did have the downfall of possibly making it the case that some students wouldn't have access, right? Kind of equal access to important learning activities that are going on in one part of the grade and not another. And we talked about that idea at some length. He also pointed out that in kind of collaborating at a grade level or within a discipline around writing curriculum, great ideas are shared and incorporated in all classrooms, and that's obviously a good thing. I'll invite my colleague Rick to speak more to this, but he did ask about flexibility for teachers in terms of pacing in relation to student learning. The teacher sort of recognizes, these students are struggling with something, can we slow this down? And Marvin did point out that, this is a, quote, inexorably rigorous curriculum. There's a sense in which one must move expeditiously through the units to reach the standard. Students and teachers, in some sense, therefore, are going to be held in a closer alignment to these curriculum documents than ever before. Rick also asked really important questions about developmentally appropriate or inappropriate curricula. This is, of course, a big question around Common Core Learning Standards. And Marvin described the standards as pushing all students out to the limits of their capacity, and that growth is obviously doesn't happen uniformly across a grade level, or it's not a linear process for individuals. And he recognized that there's a challenge there, right, to make sure all students aren't meeting these standards at the same time. The mastery approach, in a way, doesn't take that into account, the difference in developmental patterns across a heterogeneous population of learners. And I think what we've just heard tonight really kind of eloquently brings to the fore the responsibility placed on the school to help students meet standards, and that's going to require a lot of ingenuity on our part as well. He talked about the focus on helping students prepare, in a sense, to get to the goal of meeting standards. Scaffolding is important, but just as important as scaffolding is the imperative to help students take responsibility and independence for themselves as learners, and that's the ultimate goal, obviously. Laura asked about differentiated learning. How does that fit into the development of this new curriculum? And Marvin spoke to learning progressions that are built into the standards. There's an iterative process whereby students go deeper and deeper with certain key ideas. He pointed out that this is a thinking curriculum, that's his phrase, no longer a mile wide and an inch deep. We got into some discussions about writing and where and how it's taught in the curriculum. There doesn't seem to be any real empirical evidence to suggest our students are graduating from Rhinebeck High School encountering serious difficulties in writing. We talked about instructional delivery and how technology will be integrated into the newly developed curriculum. Obviously, at present, it's being used more to access content than anything else, but there's a lot of potential for a more dynamic integration of technology, and Steve Jensen will be called upon to talk to us about that. I also observed really getting the chance to look at this very granular level at what's happening with the units, a tremendous amount of creativity and imagination, integration of reading and imaginative literature across the curriculum, not just in English classes, but in social studies learning, and that was particularly heartening to see. And again, finally, Marvin pointed out that the curriculum is built consciously and recursively to return to concepts of analysis, understanding, and argumentation. The giant binder that we reviewed together was just a fraction of what ultimately the new curriculum will be. So we did spend some time talking about access. How will parents, people in the community be able to access this material? It will all eventually be archived in ways that'll be accessible and usable online. There will be rubrics to help guide people in terms of their understanding. Not every piece of the curriculum will be there, but at least a kind of an outline will be available of the building blocks of the curriculum. And we did agree amongst ourselves that rather than try to review everything as it's being developed and kind of sitting on it, it makes sense perhaps building by building to work through the documents and then bring them to the full board for consideration and discussion. Math curriculum is underway. We got an update on the grades that were sort of imminently about to conclude their ELA curricula, and the high school is, of course, writing its math curriculum locally also. Marvin expects to report on overall progress of curriculum development via the curriculum committee. We're hoping by the end of the school year. We talked a little bit about the CDEP process, which is taking off, and how our group might usefully send suggestions to that body. We will meet again on June 23rd and continue our review of curriculum documents as they are made available to us.
All right. Questions for curriculum committee or comments? Rick?
A little bit of a prologue here, folks. My committee colleagues have heard this. And Deirdre may remember this, that last year when the committee assignments were being assigned, I actually lobbied to get on the curriculum. I lobbied hard to get on the curriculum committee because this is what I did. This is what I spent a good share of my career doing. So from the professional standpoint, for whatever my experience is worth, the piece of work that these people have developed is excellent. It's exquisite. We haven't seen it in its full detail yet, but you can just tell already that this is a wonderful piece of work. And I want to congratulate all the way down the line here, not only the professionals who have done it, but the leadership of Marvin and Joe. Having said that, I have a couple of areas that are indicated here, and I just want to wave a yellow flag here, folks. You know, that's a cautionary flag, and I realize that we're on the kind of horns of a dilemma here where a lot of this Common Core is money-driven, and some of it is driven by political ambition. So it's a difficult situation for us to be in, and therefore, once again, thank you for the leadership, and you and Marvin. But I'm more than a little uncomfortable with the lack of flexibility that comes with the territory here. As I said to them, what do you do when you look into the eyes of a class and you can just see that something that's been mentioned or something that happened, a prison break that occurred, and that's not in the curriculum? You know, how do you handle that? I was in a classroom on 9/11. I was in a classroom when, well, I won't go through the list of it because we've all been in the world when those kind of things happen, where you have this, as Marvin calls it, stubbornly, inexorably rigorous plan. That's a euphemism for you don't have a heck of a lot of time to be flexible. And that's a problem. That's flat out dangerous. I was saying to Deirdre here earlier, I mean, look at the talent we have assembled around this table, okay? None of us had the same experience in the classroom, and it worked pretty well. You want to always kind of think about that as we're falling in line and deciding that we have to do something. I learned a long time ago in education that sometimes what you don't do fully is as valuable as what you do as fully as you possibly can. So I'm just raising that flag for us, all of my colleagues here, to be aware of. And the other one, as it's pointed out here, is I'm quite concerned about the developmentally appropriateness of this. We have kids we know in our school system here who are not diaper trained yet. We have kids come into kindergarten who have never handled a pencil. And by the end of kindergarten, they're expected by some mandated number to have achieved things that they cannot possibly achieve in spite of the effort that's going to be made here, the wonderful effort that's going to be made here. They cannot possibly achieve, and in some cases it's going to crush them. And that, you know, if you crush them early on, they're gone. So we have to be very, very, that's just another flag, and I know everybody knows it. Certainly Joe's known it for a long time, and Marvin is very sensitive to it. But, you know, 3 of us get to sit on the committee, and 4 of you don't. So, you know, as I said to Deirdre here earlier, I came on here just trying to help out. And some maybe my professional experience, as I point that out, can cause us to just kind of keep looking really carefully at it. And as we see these other documents come along, let's take the time to talk about it. Let's have Marvin in and let Joe, as they do so well, explain to us and kind of say, is there another way of doing it? Differentiation is the term that's used these days, but there's not enough of that at this point. So I'll stop now and wave my flag.
Deirdre?
I just want to second everything you've said. I think these are really important considerations for us to, I mean, I hope my minutes captured some of the quality of the questioning that was going on in the committee. And I mean, we talk all the time about differentiation of instruction, acknowledging the individuality of students as learners, and where's the individuality of teachers? I mean, the faculty we've just honored tonight, I mean, they're not all one kind of teacher. They all have their different excellencies and strengths and talents that they've shared with this district for 20, 25, 28 years. And I think we have to have diversity and allow for diversity and flexibility in the way we teach as well as learn. And you know, the degree to which the curriculum does make space, and I think that actually I did notice there was a lot of choice in terms of all the kinds of readings and so forth. I think that that's to be applauded and frankly, you know, cherished and defended, allowing for that diversity in how we engage with student learning and teaching.
The Rhinebeckizing that we've done has done it's very good.
Yeah.
We've done as best as we can given the parameters that we have available.
Yeah, not to, I have a question about something you say on the second page
okay.
of the minutes, up at the top, just in the second sentence, like there's a focus on drills and practice to prepare students to play the game. Could you elaborate on what that
I
conversation
think it was
about?
it
I'm not
was
sure.
using the sort of coaching metaphor for practicing skills, so that it isn't just about. Marvin it was in the context of talking about scaffolding. Sometimes lessons are over scaffolded, so that students can kind of do things within the scaffolded parameters of the task. But the goal ultimately is to have students be able to sort of think through new kinds of situations.
Okay.
And so the coaching metaphor, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but the coaching metaphor was really about you can't pre-script a game.
I see.
Right. Not to say that
You
life is a game.
Okay, I hear that.
but-
Okay, I was misunderstanding.
But the teachers are not so much about drilling content into the minds of kids, but to kind of coach
Right.
them to take what they've got and use it dynamically.
I see. Okay. So, and I think your minutes are fantastic. They really express a lot of what was going on in the conversation that is so important. I would say these are not just yellow flags. I would say that these are red flags to be raised about lack of flexibility and development not being appropriate, because one of the issues is sort of like, what are we, not just like, can we, Rhinebeck Isaac, can we do it well enough, but what are we missing if we go if we do what the state requires us to do? What is not happening? Celebrating the difference is in development of the differences in being a human being and growth, and how we appreciate that in a classroom or not. Not to mention all the other things Rick said. So I guess I would just say that I think it is something we should mull over as we develop goals and strategies for thinking about how we're implementing this over the next year or so. We talk about advocacy, we've talked about, does this sort of reflecting on this impact the board's goals? So the question I have is like, so what does the board do with this, right? We just go like, good luck, or do we, what should a response be? How do we support teachers to do the right thing in our classrooms, even if state mandates are making things really hard for children, which in many places, in many accounts, that happens, right? So how do we make sure that doesn't happen, and what's our role in it? I don't have an answer to that, but I think we should be thinking about that.
Yeah, I think our approach is to, as much as is within our power as educators, and specifically the teachers who are writing these curricula, because that's, Marvin's not sitting in his office writing these. I mean, he's working with groups of teachers to do that, but ultimately the teachers who are going to be delivering the curriculum are the ones who are writing it. And yes, of course, it's within a framework of the Common Core standards, and I think our goal all along has been to minimize, if not eliminate, those issues, whether that's possible or not. I mean, again, this is, you see on, tonight you're going to approve summer curriculum projects, and a bunch of them are from the grade levels that have already written curricula. So we know this is going to be, for better or for worse, it's going to be a years-long process of implementing, redoing, fixing till we get it as close to the way we want it as possible. Again, other school districts aren't doing that. They're pulling the stuff off the shelf and they're implementing it. So I think we're dodging as big a bullet as we can by saying, you know what, we're taking the time and the financial resources to do it and to redo it and to customize as much as we can. Unfortunately, time's going to be the only thing that lets us know a couple of years down the road, are we getting it right or not? And that's a terrible thing to have to say, that we're going to have to invest that kind of time rolling out and revising. But I don't know that we, at this point, at least from where administrators are sitting, that's doing a lot more than a lot of other school districts are doing. A lot of the, there's not, I'll say this and knock on wood, there's not a lot of churn in this school district and others in our county. And I sat at a school boards association meeting last year when we were talking about the Common Core. And I could name the school districts, but I won't. But interestingly enough, the school districts that weren't experiencing a lot of churn and a lot of pushback were the ones that were doing what we're doing. And the districts that were getting a lot of backlash were the ones who were just taking a box off a shelf and putting it out there. So again, I'm not saying we should do it to avoid the churn, but I think the minimum of churn compared to some other places is, at least in my opinion, a positive sign that we're doing a reasonably good job with a probably close to impossible task, and a lot better than a lot of the school districts, at least in this region, are able to do. But in terms of the support is time, it's money. I mean, those are the things we need to have if we're going to continue to tweak this thing and revise this thing so that it gets as close as we can get it to what we're being told we have to do. Outside of an outright insurrection where we just say, forget about it, we're not doing that, and carry us all off to jail. Anyway.
Lisa?
Joe, I appreciate your making the comment about time being one of the elements here and having to see how things are going to shake out over time, having put in the effort and the thought that the professionals who are responsible for this are obviously doing. And I certainly agree with what both of you have said about being cautious, paying attention to the issues of the developmental appropriateness of the curriculum to the children that's being delivered to. But I do want to just make a comment about keeping all of this in perspective and not allowing the concerns about what might happen to take away from the good things that clearly in this report are happening. We have a very talented staff from top to bottom, and that staff's not going to turn into a bunch of robots just because the state says you must do this, and this. Realistically, there's always going to be individuality in the way the teachers deliver curriculum, because teachers are individuals. They do things individually. If you're a student learning the same curriculum in Mr. X's class and Mrs. Y's class, that experience is going to be different because Mr. X and Mr. Y are different. So I'm not saying I'm unconcerned about the value of individuality, but I'm not persuaded yet that we are facing an inexorable loss of the benefit of that. The other thing is, and this is related, that we, as in Rhinebeck, are not going to simply say, oh, you can't achieve what the curriculum expects you to achieve at this point in the year, and therefore, we don't have to do anything for you, we don't have to pay attention to you, you just sort of vanish. We've never done that, and we'll never do that. We'll always support the students and give them whatever help they need to achieve as much as they can achieve. So, I don't think the state can prevent us from doing that, but let's not be concerned about today. Let's not be concerned that we won't be able to do that unless we come to a point where it's clear that our ability to do it is being hampered. I didn't hear that you think that that's a serious concern today. In the future, if it becomes a concern, we'll find a way to manage it. But it certainly sounds like the work that's being done is very exciting work. And considering the fact that the faculty in the schools have said, in general, they think that the Common Core standards are positive, and it helped them to teach and to think about how they teach. I think that we should support that view. Say, yes, let's use these positively. We have to, but not just because we want to.
Deirdre?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess, there's definitely, I hear what you're saying about sort of the positive elements. We do have a great faculty, and people have a lot of integrity in the way they teach, regardless of what state mandates are there. But, I believe we have heard through parents at our own coffees about concerns about developmentally inappropriate work in classrooms and what the consequences of that can be on individual students. So I'm less, one of the concerns I think that's being brought out through the curriculum committee conversation is, from my standpoint, is less concern about a document than concern about the impact daily on students. So I appreciate what you're saying about, Joe, what we're doing, but the goal is not to create a good document. The goal is to create a classroom environment that supports like the development of individual human beings and their capacity to learn and grow, authentically and enthusiastically, as our mission describes, right? So I just would want to be cautious about the impact of policy on how people behave, because that is what policy is intended to do, is to impact behavior. Our own policies are about impacting behavior. So monitoring that is important. And I think linked to that is that parents, what we have seen about parents being unsettled is an increase in the number of parents who chose to opt out of state tests, which I think, my own interpretation is that people did it for a variety of reasons, but it's linked to, for some people, to like larger impact of education reform initiatives, of which the Common Core is a piece. So that hasn't been all teased out. I'm not sure every parent has a really clear and explicit reason why they opted out, but I think it suggests a kind of concern about state policies that we do need to be attentive to.
All right.
I'll just say one last thing. Paradoxically, I couldn't agree with you more about the goal isn't just to create a document. Documents are, as you point out, they're a snapshot in time. They're going to be changing in terms of revisions, and that's why, in a sense, waiting to get the whole curriculum done and bring it here, it seems a quixotic thing, right? Because we're doing it piece by piece, and as each piece is sort of settled on and approved by the board, it'll continue to be a living thing, right, in the way curriculum is being delivered. But paradoxically, while there's all of this kind of stringency in terms of being able to describe what we do when we teach students, there's also going to be this, I think, imperative on the part of teachers to not let that description merely be what we do, right? That we'll always want to go above and beyond whatever it is that standards try to describe or measure or quantify in terms of really responding to the actual human beings in the classrooms and the kind of education that Rhinebeck values and continues to represent. So it sounds strange to say it that, it's like these standards aren't enough really in terms of describing that more holistic view of education, which is really important in our district, and I think it continues to be.
Diane?
I just said that actually came up tonight, one way the teachers is to keep that individuality. We spoke about Miss West, and she'd done plays in the classroom for years, and I don't think Common Core came in that. There wasn't room for that anymore. They turned into a club for everyone. It's a great example of how we can kind of keep some of those pieces and be a little bit more creative and let them do that. Find ways to keep some of those things.
All right. Any more for curriculum? Okay. You on the policy committee?
I'll give Deirdre a break.
Well,
Depends on which order.
the order on the agenda is different than the order in which these came in, so.
looking at the numbers of.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
That's
well,
all right.
I'll do
Policy, right?
I did policy. Okay, the meeting that we had last week was kind of, I don't think it was intended to be, but it turned into sort of like a wrap up the school year meeting where we pick picked up on a number of things that we had dealt with previously that were awaiting further action. And then we were presented with a couple of new things that we will be dealing with in subsequent meetings. The two pieces of new business were a new policy on student wellness and a potential policy on selection classification. Both of these are works in progress, so we don't have anything. We have a draft document on student wellness that Tom Brunel gave us during the part of the meeting that he attended. But as he said, this is something that needs to be Rhinebeckized in a big way. And the district's Health and Wellness Committee at Policy Committee's request is going to take the laboring oar on this. They're far more conversant with the subject matter than the Policy Committee is. So they are going to take their hands to it, and also to the implementing regulations. And then at some point, that will come back to the Policy Committee and we'll review it from more, policy-ish. And we'll pass on it, and then at some point it'll come to the board for action. And then on selection classification policy, that's actually something that's going to move faster because it's the goal of the administration to get that in place in time for the full sports season. So Steve Boucher is studying modifications made by the state education department on this subject, and that will turn into a new and revised policy for our review sometime this summer. And so you can expect to see this before the board sometime before the beginning of the school year. And then,
Excuse me, if I could make one clarification on that. It's not going to drive a new policy. There is a statement in our current policy on interscholastic athletics that addresses selection classification. So that piece will have a minor change. It won't be a new policy.
it wasn't clear to me from my notes whether it was going to be a new piece or a revision.
Yeah, that's why I'm clarifying it.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then in terms of old business, we picked up on a number of things that had been hanging in one form or another. And I won't go into a lengthy discussion about these. It's summarized pretty clearly in the minutes. The one thing that I do just want to touch on briefly, because we talked about it here before, is the homework policy, which is going, which had gone back to the administrators for their input, which they gave, and they gave quite thoughtful input. We reviewed their proposed revisions, and we had a few questions that we asked Joe to go back to that group with, and he will do so, and that will come back to us at some point, hopefully by the next meeting, if possible. And so that too is likely to be coming before the board, maybe by the end of the summer, hopefully. If not, then not too long afterwards. And we expect to be continuing our romp through the policy manual at the beginning.
Questions for policy? Laura?
Really a comment more than a question. I understand, and thank you, Jeff, for forwarding all the information about selection classification. I'm wearing my communications hat right now, and because this potentially could affect fall sports and middle school students who'd like to play up, it would be really great if we could put out some information, just a flag that says, what you've known in the past may change. Please understand we're working through the details, whatever it is. But there is an expectation of how this works in the district, and if we change it, on August 12th, because the rules have changed, I think that would really throw people off.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point, and also, if we're going to do something, we should probably do it before the end of the school year, when we're still going to be communicating with.
Through the power of digital communication, we actually can push stuff out to parents of this year's 6th and 7th graders, I just want to make sure that we're not just pushing out a red flag and then we're getting calls about, what does this mean? What does this, I want there to be something that we can tell them, even if it doesn't have all of the details worked out. I don't want to get anybody into a lather over this change that we're not at least able to somehow boil it down and give people a sense of what the change is going to be. But as soon as we're understanding it fully, and you tell me if you read that document, if you understand it fully, because I've been through it at least once, and I'm still asking Steve, what does this mean? What does that mean? But when we get a reasonable handle on it, then we'll push something out. We can do it via School World or Messenger or whatever. It's one of those school digital things. At any time we want. So what's that?
Send it directly to those two grades.
Oh yeah, that's right. I have no reason to send a K-12, right?
So this is just a change in the requirements for middle schoolers,
Correct.
and that's 6th and 7th.
Well, would be this year's 6th and 7th, would be next year's 7th and 8th.
JV.
That's the only, those are the only.
JV, okay.
Correct. Or varsity, and to play it at the high school.
Right, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I support that, because kids do look, they want to know what they might have to do. In a small district, that's kind of happened a lot.
Yeah.
I know the regulation seems to be written about, like, it is an exceptional student, X, Y, and Z, and, we have a handful every year who do it,
Sure.
so.
Just for the benefit of those who may be watching on YouTube, is that selection classification is a means for middle schoolers to play up to JV or varsity level, and there's a number of requirements that have to be followed in order for that to happen. And the state education department has changed the rules this year, and so we're working through how we're going to handle that. Diane.
It's actually just a test, a physical part that they have to take to be able to try out.
Right.
It doesn't, you don't
The
pass that all of a
classification, right.
sudden you're on team.
Right.
It's still.
Right.
Good point.
Okay, anything else for policy committee? All right, communications.
Okay, I'm sorry, I write voluminous minutes, but I'll try to be expeditious. We talked a lot about the website, so for our viewers at home, we've been talking about our website.
And that report is over.
Yes, it has been an epic conversation, and so the moment has come. The contract with School World is due to be renewed in July, so this would be the perfect moment to take the plunge and depart from our relationship with School World and, go live with our new website. So there are a number of things happening to kind of make that process begin this summer. There will be opportunity for administrators, teachers to migrate materials they've already developed into the new website. We also talked about ways to support faculty who perhaps have not really been using the website to create their own teacher pages or have very dynamic presence with their teacher web pages, to get them up and running with this new system. And Steve and Joe seem to have a good plan for that. Some faculty members have been so entrepreneurial with coming up with their own YouTube channels and digital materials that they work on with their students. One of the goals is to get that all under one umbrella with the new website, and that seems like a great opportunity. Steve also talked about how really working with new faculty, newly recruited faculty through orientation, or people who've just come into the building recently, to get them in contact with all the resources of the website is a pretty important opportunity at this juncture. Communications are going out to the teachers, invitations are being issued, and we hope to know more through meeting as a committee over the summer about exactly how that's taking place, so we can fill you all in the board meetings as well. Student email accounts are now coming online. We talked about how important it is ultimately, once all of these email accounts are operative, that all communications between school personnel and students should take place through the district website. We talked about best practices for helping students in the younger grades, middle school, use their email accounts, perhaps just internally for internal communications in grades 6 through 8. And got into a lot of more granular discussion of aspects of the website. I don't think we have to go through all of those, but they're in the website now. I mean, they're in the website. They're in the minutes now. But, you know, the most important thing and why we've spent so much time in Communications Committee talking about the website is it's the first thing that new families go to other than a visit to the building in terms of finding out who we are. So really being intentional about creating messages from the guidance office, or, you know, Richard Zipp's office, or Joe greeting people to the district as the superintendent, thinking about how that welcome and information can be imparted to visitors to the website. It seems like a golden opportunity for us in terms of our communication strategies as a district. We're going to meet on. We're hopefully going to meet prior to. We're going to meet in July. We're going to meet in July to follow up on all of this, and I think that's all I'm going to say, in the interest of brevity.
Diane.
I just want to touch on it just on the student emails.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be really, and you touched on it, but really crucial about explaining to the students exactly how they're to be used and when they're used to their own email accounts.
Correct.
And definitely difference in high school and the middle school, and parents wanting access and what should be coming in there and that they are private. And
Right.
definitely, Steve would do that with each student, better how that would be done, but there's a lot that goes into that.
It will likely be included in the acceptable use policy that every student has to sign before they're allowed to get on the system. There are some other changes that we'll be making to that, and I believe the plan is to have every student sign that off fresh this fall. So
Is that part of like their principals meeting with them and talk?
I'm not sure when they do it to be.
It's just
Computer use policy.
yeah. Just,
All the verbal
it might take a little bit
acknowledgement.
more time.
It might.
Yeah.
Just so that
It might.
Yeah.
they all be like, I know, that.
Yeah, we talked about that at length. Yeah. It's not a private account.
Right.
Lisa.
Forgive my ignorance, who is Ed Schindler?
So he's someone we've been contracting with to build this website, to customize it for us, instead of, again, pulling something off the shelf like it's what we have now. And but there are a lot of limitations when you go with a canned product. So we're trying to. So we had to bring somebody in to actually build it from the ground up for us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else for communications? Okay. Move on to CDEP.
Another incredibly productive and exciting meeting yesterday. Midday. We spent a lot of time vis-a-vis Deirdre's comment about how to get feedback back to the committee. We spent most of our time talking about the mission, vision, and core values statement. Dr. Jager came back to facilitate our discussions, and he's really fantastic at getting the whole group thinking and talking, sharing, and which is really important, I think. So we've sort of set up this format where everybody has the time to sort of throw out their ideas, and then we discuss the what ifs and if then what concepts around the ideas that are being thrown out, so that we can then come to some sort of consensus of opinion. Most of our discussion focused around the second sentence of the vision statement. We started off acknowledging that this document, as it's been written for the last 15 years, is really strong and very powerful, and what we are creating from this is an evolution to take us to the next level and to make new promises given 21st century education. So just so you don't have to read through the entire vision statement, I'm going to just read to you the new sentence that we have. There were concerns surrounding just having the high school graduate, diploma being the end game for the district, and it really isn't, nor was it the intention of the subcommittee that put this together, so it was really helpful for them to hear sort of the fresh perspective on what we were reading. So the new sentence reads, each student enjoys equity of access to opportunities in an enriching environment, allowing for mastery of the skills and knowledge necessary at each grade level to meet or exceed high school graduation requirements. Our students will become, and this is our promise, self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, et cetera, from board policy. We all felt, I think, really energized and committed to figuring out the ways in which we're going to be able to deliver on this promise through the redesign of this document. So it was really fantastic. Some people had to go meet with the state education department, so we cut it a little bit early yesterday.
Was that a can jam?
But we are going to be convening the group again over the summer to talk about, rather than data, which we all know is suspect, to talk about the goals around how we get to this, despite suspect data, despite all of the other stuff that's out there. And then once we do have some information that is workable, how we use that to inform the goal process.
Yeah, we actually, as part of the process the other day, we actually have a timeline and work products at various stages of the coming years, starting this summer through the fall. That brings us up to potential recommendations to the board at the beginning of the budget cycle in the event that there are recommendations that require financial support, and then assessing year one by this time next year, and then repeating the cycle and building on it. So I think people felt good about the fact that they were actually seeing the approaching year kind of laid out with a game plan as to what's going to be done when. So again, we covered a lot of ground in that 2.5 hours. So stay tuned.
Questions or comments for CDEP?
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to good news. Any good news? Laura?
Board education, in some measure, was great on the campaign. I would like to publicly thank my partner, my cholesterol, Mark Howard, who's incredibly patient and very bad partner.
That was good news.
She learns well, though. She's very good at it by the time.
Quick study.
Lifelong learning.
What an excellent teacher Kevin is, straightened out my in one, 10-minute session.
It's brilliant.
It's crazy. Are you going upstairs? No. Kind of eyes, I did not win yesterday.
That was because of me.
But I'm kind of frustrated.
I might point out that the Walker team was good.
I feel that they
You guys were good.
taking the equipment home over the
That wasn't fair. They were a team.
I have some good news.
Some real good news.
Well,
He doesn't want us back?
no, it has nothing to do with that. But I did find out yesterday afternoon that a meeting of the county school superintendents has been scheduled for Friday morning, June 19th, and that just happens to be the day when the dunk tank comes to town.
You're not going to be at the field day.
I know where my responsibilities are. I feel compelled to. They'll miss me. They'll miss the
They
big
will.
tidal wave that occurs when I get plopped into the dunk tank. But I'm not going to be able to
You've been good that way.
to humor them.
Tom?
Maybe Tom will go. Tom will go.
I don't wish that on my worst enemy. So I think right now, actually, I think it's John Chemnitzer, who doesn't have a choice. He's the building principal. And I think, I actually think our SROs volunteered to be in the dunk tank. Good sports that they are. Now, they may be bringing in the police dive team to take their place. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, I will not be in the tank this year.
We'll miss you.
Duty
Joe.
calls,
We'll miss
you have to do what you have to do. Next, that was good news. That was bad news. Sad news. Very sad news.
I have good news. I was fortunate enough to see the performances by the 8th grade ELA students who walked over to Chancellor today.
With Mrs. Karaoke?
With Mrs. Karaoke performing, yes, my phone couldn't spell cake, but Deidre Cake's classes went to perform scenes from Romeo and Juliet for the 5th grade students. And, that kind of special relationship the 5th grade has had, with Shakespeare in the past, it was nice to see the students had prepared, they understood the play, they had discussion before the performances, and then all members of the 8th grade had some role in enacting the immortal lines of William Shakespeare today at Chancellor. So it was really wonderful to see.
Diane?
I didn't witness it myself, but the walking tour, history tour that Mr. Krishnack puts on with the 7th graders, he helped the 2nd graders have the same tour, and then 7th grade students led those tours in costumes for the 2nd grade members.
Great.
Rick?
Oh, little thing, I stopped in on the sectional softball game that was played here last week between Kingston and Clarkstown South. And being a gregarious enough guy, I went around and kind of introduced myself to the people on the various sides, and without exception, they all complimented on the facilities we have here.
Oh, very
And I can
nice.
remember back when they wouldn't allow sectional games to be played on our field, so congratulations to those of you who have been on the board long enough to get this right, because it's excellent.
Nice to hear that.
Great. Any other good news? All right, move on to old business.
No.
I just had a quick
Please.
thing for facilities, actually. I don't know whether you all had the chance to read on board, this was 2 weeks ago, May 25th, but there's an article about schools starting to use compostable trays and what they do about sorting. And this article specifically points out Cornell Waste Management Institute, and they've got programs for schools to implement, and sort of how to get over the hurdles of sorting.
Great.
Great.
What was what edition?
Cornell,
I'm about 3 months behind on my...
Can we take that article? We're meeting tomorrow.
Sure, absolutely.
There you go.
What's the
Actually, give it to Lisa. Lisa's
24th,
going.
I think.
You take it.
It was
Or give it to her.
Yeah, I got it. 25th, May 25th, 2011. No, May 25th, 2015. No. Thank you.
Other old business?
Yeah, I have one in your, I think at your places here. I've been collecting interest in various board committees, even though this is at least 2 weeks earlier than we usually arm wrestle for those coveted spots. But you can see on there that the X's are people who said, just put me where I was last year, I'm fine. I have no preference, that's where I'm going to be. The people with numbers are the ones who said, these are my preferences, and the question marks are from Lisa, who hadn't responded to me, but she said to turn those question marks into X's.
Yes.
So that's what we have. There's a minor amount of overlap. I'll let you guys work it out on the Can Jam court. But we're real close. It'd be nice to wrap that up by our next meeting, and this way it's one less thing to argue about at our organizational meeting on June 14th. So anyway, we don't discuss it now, but
Oh, and unless somebody else wants to be the RSF representative for next year, I'd be happy to continue. If the RSF will have me on that.
okay, so no one's challenging Lisa for that one. Okay. Thank you. That's my old business.
Yes.
I don't know if it's old business or not, but just to say to anyone who is interested or has questions us individually about school start time, that the group will be meeting again to talk once more. Yeah, yeah. So, no, just various people have come to me and asked, oh, what's happening? So we're going to meet again.
We have somebody coming from not the bus company, from TransFinder, thank you, the routing software company to work with us. So we'll see.
Will you be reporting out at the next board meeting on this meeting? Yeah. I really don't want to. You don't want to. I'd rather do the only thing with those. Board meeting.
I'm with those down because I've not yet done either of those and would be interested, but otherwise
Because
I'm
we
just
have
staying on the committees already on.
broadening the,
I didn't know if they would be open or not.
Well, as we sit here now, I'm not certain that there's going to be a recommendation to do anything different for the coming year. I'm not saying there isn't, I'm just saying we're not at that point yet. Maybe we'll be at that point tomorrow, Thursday, but we're not there as we sit here right now.
So you're saying the urgency?
I'm saying we don't have the information we need, and we need, I think, back a ways when we had a conversation earlier in the year, we decided we were going to do this in a measured, deliberate way, and we weren't going to rush into any decision without having done all of our homework and our research. So that's where we're at. Maybe it'll all become crystal clear to us on Thursday, and the decision will be self-evident, but I never plan on that happening. That's what I'm saying.
All right. Other old business? All right. Public comment? We have one member of the public.
The one who's remained.
No public comments. Okay. Other?
Yeah, I'm not, it sounds like I'm like a travel agent here. I'm not pushing this. But if you're interested in attending the NYSBA conference, at least 3 of you have told me you're interested. Let me know. If you can't make a commitment this early, I get that. I'm into trying to save some money if we can. Those who are sure they want to go can make that commitment early. We can save some bucks. So just let me know. And before the first deadline, which I think is June 30th, I'm going to have Mary Ann pull a string on whomever has responded affirmatively. Other people can get in on it later. It'll be a little more expensive. At some point, we'll have to set a hard stop for accommodations, because we don't want to be trying to get hotel rooms a week before the conference. Although I quite like where we wound up last time, even though it wasn't on. You did a great job tracking that place down. But anyway, I'll just be the kind of the nagging little voice that says, if you want in, let us know. I guess that's all I have.
Joe, I have a question, because you did provide us with
Yes.
a mentoring program. Is that something the board would approve or not? You just asked us to take a look at it.
You know, I'm trying to think of what we did, because the last time was like 12, 14 years ago. It was part of the CDEP plan. Well, there's contract language, but that mentoring plan goes far beyond the contract language. We'll talk about the contract language hopefully in executive session tonight, if we can have a few minutes to do that. But most of what's in this document is like the nuts and bolts of how it works. So I guess I respond by saying I'm not really sure. I know it's been approved in past years when the board was approving a CDEP plan every year, because it was part of the CDEP plan. But we're kind of in this transition with CDEP, so I think it's a good idea if we are able to do this before the start of school.
Okay, Laura?
just to follow up on Deirdre's comments, which I think were really thoughtful. And I am wondering about including what we talked about in communications, which was sort of that orientation around how to use the new website. That's not part of the checklist of things that they should go through, just so the new teachers have access to.
I would make a request. I got good comments from Diane and from Deirdre. And if you would do me a favor, and if you have any other ideas to throw in the stew pot, just shoot me an email, copy everybody so everybody else knows what's out there. I mean, this is, strictly speaking, a negotiated document.
Right.
I mean, it's required to be negotiated with one's bargaining unit. So whatever you give me, I'll take back. It'll obviously, again, the things that have been mentioned, I can't imagine there being an objection to it, but in terms of process, I'm gonna go back and say these are things that this is feedback I got from the board. Would you be okay with these 6 changes to the plan? And if they are, then it's a beanbag. If somebody's going to take issue with something now, again, it hasn't been like hard bargaining over this. They've been very, very collegial conversations, not unlike our last contract negotiation. So it's not been, and we've had good conversations too, but it's not something I can just plunk in there because the board wants me to. I'm going to have to get them to buy into. So, and I mean, nothing that I've heard is, I think even falls in that category. But send me your ideas and then I'll put something together and shoot it back to them and we'll work it out.
Any other? Lisa?
I'm not sure if this counts as other or not, but since we're talking about things that have to be negotiated, is there anything new or anything not so new but that we don't necessarily know about yet in terms of the APPR requirements?
So instead of playing Can Jam, that's what I was doing. I was playing Space Jam with the guys from SED. No, they're supposed to be, I mean, without getting me off on a jag you don't want me to get off on. State Education Department is doing what the legislation that was approved when both houses of the legislature approved the budget. So again, I don't carry water for the State Education Department too often these days, but in all fairness to them, they're doing what they've been told to do. And they're not assuming, nor am I at this point, that any of those bills are going to pass, that anything's going to happen to forestall the time frame, which I think is a terrible thing personally. And I would encourage each and every one of you, if you have time within the next day or two, to pick up the phone or consider picking up the phone or sending a fax or an email to Kevin Cahill, Sue Serino, and Dee Dee Barrett. Thank you. Why did I draw a blank on that name? To Dee Dee Barrett, and tell them that if nothing else changes, they need to do something with the legislation that's going to push this thing out to next year, because right now we're on a collision course for another disaster. The thing I went through several summers ago that I swore I would never go through this again in my career, we're going to be going through it again. And that's not the reason, because I don't want to go through it again. That insanity about negotiating it, putting the stuff into the review room, getting crazy answers depending on who you talk, that whole craziness is going to happen within a very constricted time period, and it's insane. And I would say the assembly bill that Kathy Nolan has put forth is about the best thing that it's not perfect, but it's about the best thing out there that I think will forestall that insanity and let us get it right. That Get It Right online petition that I sent to you a couple of weeks ago, that's got like 20,000 signatures. Whether that's resonating with any of it sure isn't going to with our governor, because he's got the horse blinders on, and I don't think anything's gonna sway him off the cart path there. But if nobody does anything, we're gonna get what they're putting together. They're sending it to the regents on Monday. Again, the regents don't have a lot of power to countermand the legislation. They're pretty much stuck to. They can make a lot of noise and say how awful it is, but bottom line is if nothing changed legislatively, then that's what we're going to get. And the thing I heard while you were can jamming that concerned me most, and I'll say this on YouTube or whatever other venue, is that the State Education Department seems to continue to be inclined towards this idea that we're leaving most of these decisions to be worked out at the local level, which means you got to negotiate, and which means they're not taking much responsibility to say, yeah, this is how this stuff has to look like, and it's got to look like this across the state. They're not doing that. I went through, as an example, I went through a big long thing about how long the observation should be, and talking about, well, we were talking about how they could be a minimum of 20-minute observations, 2 20-minute observations a year for teachers who are having difficulty or not doing well, and for teachers who are effective or highly effective, they could be 2 observations of no less than 10 minutes. And I'm starting to wonder, 10 minutes, like you just about get your seat in the back of the room and observation's over. But we're not going to do that. We're going to let individual districts negotiate whatever they feel is the most appropriate. So you know what that's going to do. It's going to be this craziness over all these little details instead of just saying, here's the plan, do the plan. So to me, I'm really very concerned about what happens if it gets approved the way SED is developing it in the timeline that our legislators have put us on, which also results in changing the plan in the middle of the school year. I think these guys are thinking that schools are on a December to December school year. And I can't understand why you would say the new plan needs to start on November 15th. So what are you doing from September 1st to November 15th? The old plan, and then you're switching? Nothing? Just waiting for the plan to get approved? It's no logic here. So I'm very concerned. I hope that did that answer your question? It's a mess.
It could be.
It's a mess. It's just a mess. Other than that, life is good.
We've been getting these advocacy notices from NISBA that I've sent along, and keep getting thank yous from the Senator and Kevin Cahill. Is that appropriate? Have everybody been doing that?
Yeah, I mean, anything you can do to send the message to them. They're the ones who have to make the change.
Okay.
And you know what'll happen. The session is rolling to a close. There's all these issues out there. Some of them are education related. Some of them aren't. Housing in New York City. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So what are they? I heard this term for the first time. They're calling us the big ugly. You know, the mess that they slop together at the very end of the session, it winds up being just an abomination. I mean, I don't...
The omnibus bill.
Yeah, I don't see how that's not happening, but anyway. Not good.
Diane, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Any other? Okay, we'll move on to action items. Does anyone would like to remove the one item from the consent agenda? All right, may I have a motion to, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Second.
Deirdre, second by Lisa. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the summer 2015 curriculum program and clerical work. See attached.
So moved?
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the 2-year probationary appointment of Michael Rocco for the position of earth science teacher assigned to the Rhinebeck High School effective September 1st, 2015 in the tenure area of science at a salary of step 13 MA $83,588 in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2015-16.
So moved.
By Deirdre?
Second.
By Lisa. Discussion?
I'll make one correction I just noticed. That should be 16, 17.
Yes.
It's for next. I'm sorry, 15, 16, it's right. It's
In the
right.
fall.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Never mind.
All right. Anything else? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the permanent civil service appointment of Kim Appenauer as teacher aide effective March 2nd, 2015?
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and substitute non-instructional staff for the 2014-15 school year?
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of the discussion of the employment history of a particular person.
So moved.
By Deirdre.
Second.
By Lisa. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes.
Yeah.
Put them up, put them down already.
Hand it up.